Arsenal Man City was the major talking point of the weekend, but with Martinelli's late equaliser, for many this game left more questions than answers. Today we're going to digest and break down what this result means for both sides and more importantly the title race. Uh, Reese, we will start with you. Again, Martinelli, your favourite player in the 90 plus minute, getting the points for, well, getting a point for Arsenal. You didn't think it was coming, but how did you feel after, on reflection of that point?
If someone would have offered, I think most Arsenal fans a point before the game, they would have taken it. Man City have hit this, regardless of losing two games already this season, hit their stride last week, got a win against Napoli as well, very good Napoli side. So they were coming into this full throttle. Arsenal coming into this, I think, a bit of scrutiny in how they've performed in the big games this season at Old Trafford and Anfield in particular. So it had the makings for a game where a lot of pressure was riding on this. And normally when you stick big game or must win, or particularly must win under Arsenal, they tend to fail in that moment. Um, and they handled it well. Like I say before, it's very, very rare that when Arsenal go behind, they very rarely get a result out of it. They often play quite terribly and come away with nothing. In this case, they didn't. They come away with a point from a fantastic finish from Martinelli. And it saved their blushes because I think they were poor in the first half. But they resurrected themselves and importantly took a point in a very, very tough game. So as far as I'm concerned, happy. Um, you're disappointed because obviously you want to win the game, but the manner in which the game was played out, the manner in which Arsenal were not at their best, and tactically as well, they got it. They kept going and kept grinding it out. So yeah, happy.
Jamie, from your perspective, obviously, we'll get into it in a moment. It was a bit of an unconventional City performance in many ways. How were you left feeling with the actual result itself?
The actual result, to be fair, I sort of emulate what Reece said. City fans before the game would have taken a draw. We've had United, we've had Napoli, we've had sort of, I think we had 48 hours less rest time than Arsenal did going away to the Emirates. We got beat there 5-1 last year. So a draw we would have taken before the kickoff. Sort of, I think we're happy. The people are with, we were. I sort of thought we could get maybe a draw out of this, but the people around me were sort of, dreading the game. They were thinking we don't want another result as what we had last year. But I thought we're in a better moment than what we were last year. So I wouldn't have expected a similar result. But yeah, the 1-1, due to the way the game ended, them scoring in the 92nd, 93rd minute, that's where you're disheartened and frustrated about what happened, really.
Yeah, I think as well your comment there is quite interesting about other people's reaction and other City fans' reaction. To be scared, for Man City to be scared of going anywhere and almost expecting defeat is not something we've seen for a long time. So
We,
whether you can
we,
flip
we,
that.
we have it at certain grounds like Anfield as well. It's games where we're not expected to win. We weren't the favourites going into this. And I think it was because of how badly we got beaten last season. Sort of, you still have that lingering in your mind. When you turn up at the Emirates again, you don't want that to happen again. You just sort of, we're trying to go, we had a crap season last year, we had a very bad moment, we don't want that to happen again. So I wouldn't say it was scared, but I think it's sort of the pessimistic viewpoint, really.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk tactics then, because as I said, this has been a very unconventional City performance. Many would say park the bus to some degree. Um, And again, you look at the stats, and it's very rare you'll see City have around 30% possession in any game, even in away games. So I guess we'll come back to you first, Jamie. But why did we see this from Pep a bit more of a well? I mean, maybe it wasn't intentional, maybe it's just how the game worked out. But it's very rare you see City drop that deep and almost play. I said it in the chat like a relegation side almost, where they're just like we're parking up, we're done, we'll counter and we're happy. Why do you think that was?
Because we were 1-0 up. It sort of, we got the goal sort of early on. I think it's like the 9th, 10th minute through Haaland. And I think we all know City aren't the defensive team. Like, they aren't as good defensively what they've been in several years when they were winning titles. So you can't expect us to go 1-0 away from home against one of the top teams in the league with arguably the best defence and then go, yeah, we're still going to keep going for it. Like, we're not going to go gun-ho, and we don't want it to end to end. If it goes end to end versus Arsenal, they've got a better defence than us. I'd say we have a better attack because we have Haaland, but it's you can't just do that away from home. Sometimes you have to go. We've got to take on the pressure because it's the pressure's then on Arsenal, and the way that sort of Arteta set up, you go, okay, who's the main threats? Okay, they've got 3 CDMs on. Like, this is obviously from the first half. Why are we going to go gun ho for it, and then leave ourselves open when we're winning? If that was 0-0, there's zero chance we go that defensive. Like, there's no way we do that. Maybe in the 90th minute, when Arsenal have, a corner, a free kick, we could sit back for sort of 2-3 minutes in the 90 plus minutes. But for as long as we did, was because we were winning. I think it's as simple as that. And Pep said it in his conference. One game in 10 years of parking the bus, not too bad. Not too bad, is it?
Well, I guess the question is, will we see it from Pep now on a regular basis? I mean, it almost worked. It did almost work. And I think, again, it's all about narratives at the end of the day, right? If Martinelli doesn't score that goal, I think everyone sits there and goes, bloody hell, City have parked the bus and it's worked, and everyone praises you. So, I mean, that's just how football works at times, right? Reece, from your perspective, again, I know you at the time were saying it's done and you didn't see Arsenal breaking the game down. I mean, the one thing I do want to pick up on, and interested to get your perspective, is the celebrations mid-game, i.e. the equaliser goes in, and a lot of the players were more interested in celebrating than grabbing the ball and going to the halfway line, which I'm not just trying to bash Arsenal, but what do you make of that? Because that, for me, is quite telling.
Yeah, I think first of all, the fact that City have recorded their lowest possession, 32.8% is lower than, is the lowest of any Guardiola team in a top flight league game, which is probably testament to how Arsenal are, how good they are on the ball and how good they are controlling the game these days and dictating the game, pushing City back like that. In terms of that contributes and links to this in some capacity. I think it was relief more than anything else. I've I've defended Arsenal when they've over celebrated, and I've criticised Arsenal when they've over celebrated. This one was a sense of relief, a relief for Martinelli in particular, who, let's be honest, has been very, very poor. I've been a big critic of him, even though I've maintained he's the best finisher at the club, and he maintained that argument with the finish he scored. It was relief that if they would have lost this game, there would have been more skeptics out, more, when it comes to it, Arsenal don't deliver. They foul, it's poor, and they'd have 2 defeats already, even though it's only September. So it was relief. And at that stage of the game, I don't blame them for not picking up the ball and going back for it, because I think it's just a matter of, okay, we've got the goal, have a moment to compose yourselves, because they could have easily have gone and made a mistake and City whacked it straight up. We don't know. But I'm not going to look too much into that because I just think it was more relief at that moment in time that they managed to get the equaliser and got a bit of a monkey off their back in terms of the critics, which is a bit silly because they've not lost, to sit. They didn't lose to Liverpool or City in the past 2 seasons, but now they've only got 1 point in both those games. But that doesn't really matter. It's relief and full credit where it's due. I would argue it was a deserved point.
I think the criticism on the celebration is, I think it's just Arsenal are an easy target. I generally think that. I think, and actually, if you look, Zubimendi tries and gets the ball at the back of the net, and City, rightly, wrongly, a few of them didn't let Zubimendi get anywhere. He was basically shoved into the net, or we were play acting. We weren't giving them the ball back. So actually, I think he was the only one though. Everyone else was celebrating on the pitch and blah blah blah. And yeah, it was more relief. It wasn't the celebration they had versus Bournemouth when it was the 3-2 comeback. It wasn't that type of celebration, or even I think it was the Spurs game with the whole camera coming out and everything like that. Wasn't It was a different type of celebration, I thought. But obviously, the contrast is people get the clips of when City scored in the 97th minute last season at home, and it was 2-2. Every single player ran back. They celebrated like come on, and then ran back, and then they're going to do the contrast of what Arsenal did. But it's a low hanging fruit, to be perfectly honest. I think they're just looking for reasons to criticise Arsenal when there are plenty of other reasons. If you just look at Arteta and his starting 11, I think it's a very easy one to go to.
Yeah, and like we said, it's an easy target because other than the FA Cup in his half season, he's not won anything. So that pressure is on. That media hype is on of why you're celebrating these games when it doesn't lead to anything. I made this point against Real Madrid. They're celebrating it. They've not won anything. They're not going to go on to win it. And that happened. That's why I said it sounds silly. The one where the camera was against Liverpool. I defended it a little bit because it wasn't that bad. But in the long run, I still said they're not going to win anything. So it does make things, it makes them look a bit silly in that sense because nothing comes of it. And City know full well that, well, we're serial winners here. Let's get on with the game. But because this is only September, and I think it's stopped, ease those critics a little bit. I've seen a bit of togetherness from that team, which resonated quite nicely with me, I think. I don't think there's too much to look into it, but, it's not the end of the world they didn't go and get the ball back.
I think as well, what I will say to Arteta's credit, and again, Arsenal fans, you can celebrate this as much or as little as you want. He is the first manager to avoid defeat from Pep Guardiola in five consecutive league matches. Now, yes, some of that maybe is because he was in the dressing room with him for so long, he knows him so well. But for Arsenal fans who are looking for a bit of underlying positivity in Arteta, that is another stat that goes in your favour and you can quote. He is finding a way to at least maybe not win, but he is starting to find ways to avoid defeat in these big six games. As we saw, the record obviously recently went, but it took a worldie from Soboslai to break that record. So there is some underlying stats and stuff that does suggest that there is positivity there at Arsenal. But Reese, as you'll tell us right now, it means nothing if you're not going to beat those other teams and win something.
Well, this is it. It's a very impressive stat, and Arteta does deserve credit. Again, I'm a big critic of him, but I will praise him in that element of that he's managed to shut out Guardiola for 5 games. But what's it got him? Absolutely no trophies in the cabinet. I'm sure City would happily hand 6 points to Arsenal every season if they go and win the league. Most teams would. Do you think United in 2007-8 care that they lost to City both games? No, because they won the Premier League and the Champions League. It means absolutely nothing. The games where Arsenal are letting themselves down are at home to West Ham, at home to Everton, that game against Southampton in the 3-3 a few years back, away to St James's Park, which, funnily enough, is their next game. They're the games where they're letting themselves down. They're the games they need to get results in and where they should be celebrating. In, taking the point, but move to the next game. That's the bigger picture. Take every single game as a whole new moment. But I'll applaud him for that record. And I agree, it took a worldie from Szoboszlai to lose at Anfield. Otherwise, he would have gone, was it 3 consecutive seasons without winning, but without losing at Anfield, which is impressive. It is impressive. But at the end of the day, it's resulted in nothing. And this is why I get critical of the club and critical of the supporters, because it will lead to nothing. Just get on with it and move on to the next game. This game's done. It's in the past. They've got Port Vale on Tuesday, and then, which they have to win, by the way, because they need to win a trophy. So they have to go there and get a result. As much as everyone will laugh at Port Vale, Grimsby did still knock out Man United. So he can't afford to be knocked out of that tournament. But he's got Newcastle next, which in my opinion is a much bigger game for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, you can rotate against Port Vale and still comfortably win. So I don't think there's any concerns there, unless obviously you do lose, and then there'll be critics.
I just want to
Um,
say something quickly on that
well,
record. Look, I think you've got to look at you're playing at home and you've put three CDMs in the midfield. Well done, you got a draw. Like, there's it's sort of this is the critic, and this is what people are going on at Arteta for is how defensive do you want to be? There was no reason for playing. I don't understand it at all why you played Moreno from the start. You play Eze. Odegaard's out. If Odegaard was fit, Odegaard would have played, I think. So you put Eze in his position, and when Eze came on, he was so much better than what Moreno was basically invisible on that pitch, and Eze actually did showed something. Even if he didn't get that assist, he showed more than what Moreno did. So it's all well and good not losing in five to City, but yes, like we've said, don't win anything. It doesn't bloody matter. Sort of not losing at Anfield for a few seasons doesn't matter. We've lost there consecutive seasons. We win the league. That's what matters more. So I think it's sort of a record, but it's such a pointless one. You'd rather have anything else. Like
yeah,
I understood, like if they'd won the game, kind of said it. Yes, you sort of celebrate that with the win, but with a draw, dropping points more to Liverpool, it's such a. It's basically if I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't give a shit about that record. It means absolutely sod all. Unless they go and actually properly win something. If they did that in near it, because the last time they played City, and the 3 points mattered, City won. When they last played them, and the 3 points mattered for who was going to win the league, City won.
Mm.
And that's the problem. It doesn't matter. These records don't matter
Yeah.
in it.
The only time this game matters is if Arsenal were to win the league by a point. It's as simple as that. That is the only time this game matters because they'll look back at it and go, that was the point that in effect got us that league. Simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely like that. But what I was saying at the sort of start is, if you're going to play so why is Arteta playing so defensive? That's what I don't get. At home to a City side that's not as good defensively. Like we were very good defensively as a unit, I thought, because we had 11 corners against us, and I don't really remember any being that close. Sort of Donnarumma punched at most of them quite well, and then the rest were one headers. So it was sort of, I thought it was a good defensive performance from us, but Arsenal shouldn't have been fearing that at the start of the game. At the start of the game, they should be thinking we can go and score 2, 3 goals here against City because we're not the defensive side we have been, or the overall team we have been. So I think the thing is, I'd see it as a missed opportunity from Arsenal at home for not winning that game. Not because not this is more pre-game. I think City were pretty good in the game, and that's why it turned out to be sort of a good. I thought it was a good draw for Arsenal. I thought City deserved to win because I don't think Arsenal created anything. Like I don't remember a big chance that Arsenal created. There, Donnarumma made a massive save. He made one in the first half to Madueke, and if that had gone in, I'd be calling. I'd be like, "What is Donnarumma doing?" It was sort of like it would have been a terrible goalkeeper error for that to go in. Otherwise, Arsenal didn't create much, and that's where you've got to be concerned because I've seen like the AFT sort of like title. We wasted 45 minutes. We didn't play for 45 minutes. So what I think that's where you've got to look at the criticism of Arteta, rather as the sort of I wouldn't take that record and be positive about it. I'd be like, we could have won that game. Forget that record. Talk about that record if you go and beat us at the Etihad. Fine, you've won the game. But to do a draw and then sort of try and big it up after, that's just utterly pointless
yeah.
and pathetic.
I think a lot of Arsenal fans would say we dominated the game, but when you actually break down the stats, you dominated the ball. You didn't dominate the game. You created the same big chances as City. The XG was basically bang on one for each of you. So it's true. It's like, what do you want at the end of the day? Do you want possession and the the idea of having or dominating the game? Like the point of having the ball is to create chances, right? So I think that's a really good point about the three DMs. Let's look at the bigger picture now because it feels ridiculous to say this after 5 game weeks, but are we even going to have a title race this year? Because Arsenal have been marked as the number one contenders potentially. You're 5 points behind Liverpool already. After 5 games, like, and we look at Man City, and Man City have had some good results and performances, but you're sitting in ninth place and you're 8 points behind Liverpool after 5 games. So I guess a question to each of you: do you even believe there is a title race still on?
Um, I still think it's a bit too early to say it's completely gone. And the biggest sort of, I don't know, the biggest sort of reason why I'm saying that is because Liverpool haven't played well. And they've won all 5 games. The last minute goals, we've all seen it. They've not properly played that well. And that catches up with you. Now, if Liverpool go round in the next 5 games and go perform brilliantly, win all 5 games, so they're 10 for 10, that's when we're looking at no title race. That's kind of what it comes down to. The performances, because the performances do catch up with you. They've got off to a good start. You could argue fortunate, I'd say. I wouldn't say lucky, I'd say fortunate to get the late goals in all the games basically. You don't normally see that. But if they start turning on the performances, they get Isak firing, who hasn't actually played any minutes in the Prem, by the way. You get Works actually turning up and not being the sort of £100 million flop, which he currently is. That's when it gets concerning for City and Arsenal. I do. I'm in torn moments. I'm kind of seeing City on in this title race, and that was due to the Tottenham. Well, it was more the Brighton performance rather than Tottenham because we always lose to Tottenham. It was the Brighton game. To do that one, that's where I see City not being in it. But it doesn't mean there's not a title race. And it doesn't. I don't. It doesn't think that 8 points is a lot, but there's so much games to play, and I've seen City come back from 8 points with less games. So I think because there's more, it's still not over yet.
Yeah, that's fair. Reese, from an Arsenal perspective, 5 points.
Yeah, look, I've always maintained that Arsenal have no chance of the title, and I will always maintain that argument because I've seen it too many times and I've been proven right too many times. But Pep Guardiola is right when he says the game isn't, the title isn't decided after 5 games. He's absolutely right. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. You have to go, as we said, Liverpool have gone the first 4 games scoring late goals. Fair credit to them, that's unbelievable. You can't do that every game. Everton gave them a game in the second half. Okay, and some might say they're a bit unlucky, etc., etc. But Liverpool still got the win. It's it's just how the teams pick themselves up from here, both City and Arsenal, and of course Chelsea in there and Spurs, etc., and even Bournemouth at this stage is how they pick themselves up from there. United have had their worst start since what was it, the 92-93 season in the Premier League? Who won the Premier League in 92-93? Manchester United. They lost their first 2 games that season. That's insane. They lost their first 2 games and still went on to win the league very comfortably, if I'm not mistaken. So it goes to show it is how you end it. Now this is where it starts to require that switch on mentality and giving it a go. These are the tough games coming up for all the sides. The cold October, November games where it's easy to drop points. So you'll start to get a clearer picture in the next maybe month, but it's not decided, until the second half of the season, really.
Yeah, it's hard because there's two ways you can flip it. Like Jamie, your argument that eventually luck runs out and then eventually poor performances catch up with you. But as you said, the other argument with Liverpool is they're getting wins without even trying. Not trying, that's probably the wrong word, but they're getting wins without being anywhere close to their best. So what happens when they start warming up and playing their best? I think that's the other argument
I think
because
the
it could.
argument is if they do, that's when I say there's no title race. But if they continue like they have been, that's when it'll run out.
Yeah.
It's sort of like
I mean,
that's the argument. I get what you're saying. You're doing the reverse, but yeah, it's like I'm just saying if they continue like they are doing, because I think we had it. I think we had it like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was Spurs. Spurs had a great start to the season, but they weren't playing well. And okay, it was Spurs. It wasn't Liverpool who just won the league, but it was sort of we all was like they're going to blow up because they're performing bad. Like they're not performing that well. So that's where I'm sort of seeing it. I know Liverpool are definitely a different beast compared to Spurs, but that's kind of where I'm sort of seeing it at the moment anyway.
yeah. And also, let's put it into perspective. I know, again, it doesn't decide it, but their next three games will be very interesting because you could argue that are they going to get those, are they going to be games where they can get those last minute winners? They've got Palace next at Selhurst Park against a fantastic Oliver Glasner side. That could be it. They then go away to Chelsea. Then it's at home to Man United. Three big games there where if they pick up maximum points, phew, yeah, blimey. But they're also prone to potential slip up in one of those games. So this is where it's going to be quite interesting to see how Liverpool fare in those games because that is a very tricky trio of games there.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Maybe we're a bit premature to write off the title race, and let's hope for all our sakes that their luck or form does run out. Um, that is all we got time for. As always, we want to hear from you, so hit us up down below. Make sure you subscribe. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.